Komi wakes up from the sound of her alarm, but resets it and tries to go back to bed. Immediately, however, her phone goes off and she falls out of bed and hits her head on the floor trying to get it. When she's able to check it, she checks outside of her window and smiles. The person who sent the message was from Najimi, who asks for the notebook they asked Komi to prepare. Komi then prepares herself for school, and before she leaves, her mother gives her a scarf and sees her off. Arriving at school, Najimi touches Komi with their cold hands, which irks her. Tadano then arrives and greets Komi, which shocks her, but she regains her composure and bows in return. As Tadano puts away his outside shoes and puts on his school shoes, Komi catches him off by touching him with her cold hands. The act perplexes Tadano, but pleases Komi, and the two walk to class together. Najima then gives an elaboration on Itan Private High School's background, and when they complete it, Najima asks for the notebook they asked Komi for. Reaching into her school bag, Komi gets the notebook and Najima takes it so they can use the notebook for the Komi's Book of Friends. Its purpose is like a game where Komi asks people who she befriended to write down their names in it. The first person she signals to sign it is Tadano. He does, and the group manages to get 13 more signatures, which has Najima despondent over the fact that Komi's not even close to her 100 friend goal. Given the fact that she's been at this for the past 6 months, this response has Komi trembling. Katai Makoto, a new student at Itan High, walks down the hallway while giving an inner monologue about himself. He's stared at by his student peers. This is because of his menacing delinquent appearance. However, he considers himself to be a normal high school student. He then reveals that 6 months ago, he was bedridden with a cold, and because he was so anxious to pass through the school gate, Katai put off coming to school until the present day. To prepare himself for school, he worked out and dyed his hair blonde, all to avoid looking like a dropout. Reaching his classroom, Katai musters the courage to enter it, but when he does, he hurts his foot by the door, making him have an angry look on his face. Circling around the room, he realizes that he forgets to ask where his desk is, so he decides to wait in the back room, and his face gives off a leering look. At that moment, Najimi enters the classroom and they recognize Katai, which elates the classroom, who thinks of them as their savior. However, Katai grapple holds Najimi, and takes them out of the classroom as he doesn't want them to disclose his past to the classroom. Once Katai re-enters the classroom, he smiles and the classroom believes that he disposed of Najimi, who in fact, was in the restroom. Hoping that someone would talk with him, Katai sees that his classmates circle around Komi, which he wonders why. Wanting to change, Katai approaches the group and is blocked off by the classroom delinquents. He bumps into them and says desk. What he meant to say was good day, where's my desk?
Die. Death.
Die. Death.
It was all because Katai had something caught in his throat that he wasn't able to properly speak, and had hoped they understood him, which they didn't. After the delinquents take their seats, Katai walks forward and spots Komi, who makes him scared due to the pressure of her presence. Too anxious to stand, he takes the seat in front of Komi and takes a deep breath, which irks Komi. Noting that Komi is the only person to make direct eye contact with him, Katai recalls the book specializing in talking that he's been reading and believes that Komi wants to communicate with him. Katai then looks at Komi, who looks back at him, and as both of them are too scared to start the conversation, they simply sit and tremble. Tadano then chimes in and starts to talk with Katai, who gives a deep voice, which internally embarrasses him. Despite Katai being so self-conscious with himself, Tadano offers to show him around the school and Katai accepts the offer. Afterward, Tadano shows Katai around the school as he said, and Katai believes that Komi is a master of communication from the stares she gave him earlier that day. After school, Najimi does a snowman pose for both Komi and Tadano, but Tadano has no clue as to why they were doing it. Tadano then mentions that he thought Najimi hated winter, and they claim they hate the cold, but enjoy the events that occur in the wintertime, and names them all off. They stop midway when they realize that there are also the term finals they all have to do, and then decided they should study at Nakanaka's place. At Nakanaka's place, Tadano, Komi, Naima, and also now Ren, who gets into a quiet quarrel with Nakanaka. Inside Nakanaka's room, Naimi immediately leaps into Nakanaka's bed and falls asleep. Another brief quiet quarrel between Ren and Nakanaka occurs when the two want Komi to sit next to them.
Now the competition has begun, to see who Komi likes more.
Eventually, Nakanaka offers to play a video game to gain favor with Komi, which Ren shoots down the idea as too boyish. Ren then asks who she likes while noting she likes her. However, Komi gives no response and Tadano mentions they're supposed to be studying. Ren mentions how Nakanaka's room is like an otaku boy with its black interior and anime posters. Ren then lists off an assortment of things that every girl's room should have, and Nakanaka comments on how basic it is, which infuriates Ren immensely. The two then give disparaging comments to each other, all while jotting down notes. Tadano then tries to mediate between the two, but is shot down, and Komi is then asked who the better friend is. Komi then responds that they're both important to her. The response moves them, however, they still demand an answer. As a way to settle their conundrum, Nakanaka suggests they settle it with a video game, and Komi along with Najimi play as well. In the end, Najimi wins, much to Nakanaka's and Ren's dismay. The two try and settle the score on their test exams, however, their scores are even on that. On the day of the term finals, Komi drops her pencil on the ground and her spare breaks. Due to her being unable to pick up her spare, as she has to communicate that she has to do it. Tadano notices this and drops his stencil pen, and asks the teacher to pick it up for him. The teacher does and picks up Komi's as well. It's then that Tadano forgot his eraser and Komi breaks her own and drops it on the ground. Taking this opportunity, Tadano asks the teacher to pick it up for him, and she does. After this, both Komi and Tadano were unable to focus on their test. Komi prepares herself for school, and the moment she opens the door to go outside, she's hit the realization that a typhoon has hit her area. Back inside her house, Komi dries herself off, and her mother informs her that her teacher called them and she should stay home for the remainder of the storm. Hearing this excites Komi, but truthfully it felt ambivalent to her. Watching the rain from her living room, Komi draws a cat on the glass door, but gets spooked by a flash of lightning, which kills the power in her house. Terrified by this experience, Komi rests on her mother's lap, until her mother says she'll examine the circuit breaker with her brother Shaosuke and leaves her. At that moment, she's spooked by her phone ringing, and it's Tadano who is calling to check up on her. He learned that her part of the area had a blackout, and Komi reassures Tadano that she was fine. As Komi continues to talk with Tadano, her mother bashfully watches from the other room. Ren was melancholic. That day, the storm that hit had passed and school was back in session that afternoon. The reason for her mood wasn't because that school was back in session, but that she couldn't see Komi's panties, which Tadano picks up, and it irks him.
How can I possibly get a glimpse at Komi's underwear?
What is she talking about?
Ruminating on what kind of panties Komi wears and her yearning desire to see them, Ren has an epiphany and innocently asks Komi to play in the outside puddles with her. Surprisingly, Komi accepts the proposal, much to the shock of Tadano. Outside, with Tadano, Agari, Najima, and Komi, Ren thinks about how the puddles from the rain will reflect the color of Komi's panties to her. This is briefly disturbed by Najimi running through the puddles, and a strong gale hits them. Hoping this wind would reveal Komi's panties, it only reveals Agari's. Hence Ren trips and falls onto the ground with her phone and hopes to get a snapshot of Komi's panties. However, mud covers the shot, leaving her frustrated, and Najimi then mentions that there's a rainbow. Ren, however, is far too furious to care. Until she sees Komi gazing at it and is left purified. After school, in their classroom, Kiarai, Shinobino, Sonoda discuss all the girls in their class whom would they personally date. Tadano was also there, but not a part of the conversation. Kiarai first chose Najimi, and in the fantasy, they go to an amusement park, and after it, they eat some ice cream. His next choice was Agari, who waits for her in a shopping district, and when she arrives, she apologizes for her tardiness. He downplays it, claiming he just arrived there himself, and compliments her dress, which she claims was worn with him in mind.
I just thought that you'd be fine with it.
Next up is Sonoda, who takes a pouty Ren out to a fancy restaurant, and he apologizes for the bad food, but Ren still blames him for his bad tastes. So, Sonoda then pulls out a small navy box and presents it to Ren, who opens it up and is surprised to see inside a couple of earrings. Although she acts as if she dislikes them, Ren still puts them on while blushing and says they should leave. Hearing this bit makes Tadano think they don't know Ren's true nature. The next person Sonoda chooses is Amaharu, and he plays video games at her house, while she reads. Seeing that Sonoda is having trouble in the game, Amaharu helps him in it, and they would later play the game together. Finally is Shinobino, and his first choice is Inaka. In his monologue, he lives in the countryside as a farm help and is in a relationship with his next-door neighbor Inaka, who just farms some fresh vegetables. Shinobino tries one of them and enjoys it. For this next choice, Yadano, and he exits a convenience store. Yadano is cold, but races him home and wins. The group's last choice is Komi. However, they fail to fantasize about a perfect scenario for them to elaborate. On the other hand, Tadano thinks of Komi and him as a husband and wife who just finished dinner and play rock paper scissors to choose who does the dishes. It's Tadano who wins and does it. However, amid washing the dishes, Komi starts to help him and gets close to him, causing Tadano to have a panic attack in real life.
What am I thinking?
Komi watches a new program about cat cafes and tells both Tadano and Najimi about it. She invites Najimi, but they're allergic to them, and so she asks Tadano and he declines too, but suggests that she invite One Mine instead. The person in question then shows up and immediately answers yes. After school, Komi, One Mine, and the newly joined Otori all play with the cats at the Nico Cafe Gâteau, except Komi as the cats are afraid of her. As it so happens, Otori was very popular with the cats, which made Komi super envious. So, One Mine suggests that Komi try petting the sleeping cat, but Komi is too afraid to approach it. The alpha cat of the cafe, Chocolat, goes on an inner monologue about the people that visit the cafe until she's interrupted by another cat that warns her of Komi. Initially Chocolat downplays the warning, but becomes shocked when Komi looks at her. After Chocolat observes her for a while, she decides to leap onto Komi's lap. One Mine takes a picture of Komi holding Chocolat and sends a picture to Tadano, who regrets not going as he wanted Komi to practice inviting other people to have fun with her.
I should have gone.
One day after school, Ren sheepishly tells Komi that she loves her, leaving her in complete shock. As it turns out, it was just a two-person game where one person says I love you to another, and if the other person reacts with a smile or blushes, the original person wins. In Ren's game, however, she loses as Komi showed neither reaction, but it's all fine since Ren just wanted to confess her love to Komi. It was Komi's turn now and Ren eagerly awaits for Komi to say, I love you to her. Just then, Najimi enters the scene and plays along by saying the phrase to Komi and she does a spit take, which Naimi claims they won. Denying the fact, Tadano is asked to judge and he rules in favor of Komi. This escalates into both Najimi and Ren trying to win against Komi, so Tadano is roped into it, but is too flustered to partake in it. He's, however, coerced into doing it by Najimi as they claim it's just a game, but because he himself blushed he loses. Tadano then contemplates his loss and Komi then leaves to seemingly go to the bathroom, but in truth, she was overwhelmed with emotions. Komi didn't want Tadano to confess his love to her and yet she did in the same breath.